Good morning, everyone. Thanks for attending. It's nice to see everybody here. I hope you're having a great show and you're getting a lot out of this content. Thanks to CABDA for doing such a nice job of organizing. I'm going to go ahead and turn off my video to prevent any bandwidth issues, and then I'll go to full screen mode. So hopefully everybody can still hear me and everybody can see the deck just fine. So I'm Tim Baynes, CEO and founder of Compatio. And today we're going to talk about how e-commerce platforms aren't really all that suitable for selling cycling equipment and other types of complex equipment. First of all, a little bit about my background. I'm in Springfield, Missouri, not too far from Bentonville. We've got a lot of great mountain biking trails and road riding around here as well. I am a cyclist. I've got more gear than talent, unfortunately. Although hopefully with my new Garmin Flex trainer, we can address that in the near future. Really love that with Zwift. That's a nice setup. I've been implementing what are called product configurators for about 25 years. Really, it's been my focus, and I've installed these systems for some of the largest manufacturing companies in the world. A company like Cisco and Cummins diesel engine, as well as Cummins power gen, Flowserve, Masterlock. All of these enterprises sell complex equipment, much of it made to order. And the systems that allow those kinds of products to be customized and sold one by one are called configurators. And you've probably interacted with a configurator at some point in your life. This is Jaguar's configurator running on Jaguar's website, and most car dealers do this now. If you want to customize or personalize the car and order it just the way you want it, Jaguar does that. And this system that we're looking at right here is actually one that I helped design. They were a big customer of mine a few years ago. So these are the kinds of systems that I've been focused on my entire professional career. And as a cyclist, when I've built my own bikes, upgraded bikes, etc., I've noticed a lot of challenges in finding the types of components, products that I need to basically, build out my interest in cycling and make my bike set up the way I want them. Buy a new bike for maybe now I want to get into gravel. And I want to get that set up for myself. And I think there's a lot of limitations. And I'm going to talk about some of those limitations today in terms of how folks discover and buy cycling products, especially when they're buying online. So one of the things that we're responding to is, first of all, we don't think online stores are all that helpful. There's a lot of information and there's very little knowledge. Compatibility data, for instance, what goes with what, is buried in the fine print if it's there at all. I know when I've built a new bike or upgraded, made a significant upgrade to a bike, it can take me 4 to 6+ weeks just to figure out what the components are. And I know that if you're a dealer, you're saying, wait a minute, that's what I'm for. And absolutely you are. But if you're bringing up an online store, your store needs to be able to handle that, not you. And that's where we're going to focus. Our goal at Compatio is to improve the online experience and make that work for you as a local bike shop owner when you want to sell online. So let me touch briefly on e-commerce. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this today. And if you were in my talk yesterday, some of these slides are going to be the same. I'm just going to cover a little bit of background here very quickly and then move on to new content. So if you were here yesterday, hang in there with me. But briefly, in e-commerce, as I think everyone knows, e-commerce has been growing inexorably for years. And if you look at the chart there, it was growing at about 1.8 to 2% per year in terms of the total market share, or total number of transactions that are running through e-commerce versus in person. They've been growing inexorably for a number of years. However, with the pandemic, everything changed. And as you can see from this chart, and there are lots of folks saying this, I heard Jay Townley talk about this yesterday as well. Basically, we went through 10 years of accelerated growth in 3 months last year. And so all of the e-commerce platforms, the technology providers, they have all accelerated their product development roadmaps to basically take on projects that they didn't think they would get to for 10 years. What that means for folks that are thinking about bringing up a web store, or maybe you already have one, is that, first of all, with the massive growth in e-commerce, online stores, there's more of them than ever, and it's going to get more competitive. But yet we've got a record demand for cycling products, and buyers have come to expect something different in terms of their interaction with online stores. Their buying habits have changed as a result of the pandemic, and those changes are going to be permanent. We're talking structural changes in terms of how people buy. They want to shop online. They've learned to shop online, and they expect to be able to shop online, and they expect for you to be able to accommodate any manner of acquisition that they need. They want you to ship it to you, they want you to ship it to them, or they want to pick it up in the store. They want to buy online and pick it up in the store, or they want to buy online and pick it up curbside, or they want you to deliver it to their house from your van. So consumers are now expecting this. And if you are planning to field a web store, then you should be considering these new types of expectations that buyers have. And you absolutely should be considering having a web store if you don't already. The issue with web store users compared to in-store users is that they've got a completely different set of expectations because of where they're coming from. They're on the internet shopping your store. They are digitally proficient. They know their way around. They know how to search. They know how to access all the different types of information that are available online. They're part of social communities. They're in Facebook or Instagram or Pinterest or Reddit or adventure cycling or whatever. They're part of multiple online communities that are giving them information, whether it's true or not, to that constantly. And their decisions are oftentimes going to be vetted with those or through those online communities. They're not big readers. You know, we're all used to, certainly when I was younger, I would read, I bought magazines, right? I subscribed to, probably 10 different magazines that covered the interests that I was into, fishing and cycling and motorcycles. And I would spend hours reading those articles. That's changed, right? They want to click and they want to view, and they're not going to read the fine print a lot of the time. So we at Compatio have really moved towards implementing technology that lets everything essentially be clickable. We'll talk about more about that in a minute. But if your site is going to keep their attention long enough for them to make a transaction, number one, it's got to be engaging. But number two, it's got to be a high value experience. You've got to be helping them find what they want or providing them with answers, or they're going to leave. They're going to go to where they can find answers. And in order to provide that high value experience, I'd like to ask you, what is your most valuable asset? Is it your store, maybe where it is, its location? Is it your customer service? Is it your inventory? Is it your service reputation? I'm going to argue that it might not be any of those, and instead it might be knowledge. The knowledge about how to translate their needs, their requirements, their age, their gender, what they're into, to the right kind of bike or the right setup for their bike, maybe that they already have, the right equipment. Compatibility and configuration information. They want to upgrade their drivetrain. They were on a 2x and they want to go to a 1x setup. How can you help them make that transition? That knowledge, I would argue, is, if not the most, certainly one of the most valuable assets that you have in your store. And that's critical because cycling is highly specialized and it's multidimensional. And what I mean by multidimensional is that it's not just about the bike, right? It's the bike, it's the right setup of the bike. It's all the stuff that you wear when you're on the bike, safety apparel, helmets and elbow guards and shoes. It's about a beginner or an adventure cyclist, the racks and lights and everything that they need on the bike. It might be components to upgrade the bike to get it where they want. It can also be the services that go with maintaining that bike properly over time. And it can also mean experiences, things that you go do with the bike, training workshops, skills workshops, events like Dirty Kanza. So there's a lot of stuff that goes with a bike, and there's a lot of complexity here in this industry if we're helping somebody try to find what they need to buy. In addition to that, I like to think of cycling as what we call an activity interest life cycle. It's a cycle of discovery, of learning that there is these new kinds of bikes called gravel bikes or e-bikes. It's buying, obviously. It's usually some form of personalization, making that bike over time become better suited to that user's needs. It's experiences, taking that bike and going and doing some stuff with it, riding it at the local mountain bike course and discovering that maybe your gearing isn't right, you need to change it. It's learning about that, or learning that, gee, you know, when I did this long ride, I didn't have enough hydration, so I'm going to need a Camelback or something. That experience element is really critical in terms of people's deepening attachment to this activity. And then they're sharing those learnings, those adventures, those experiences, ideas, opinions with other people in the cycling community. And then that just feeds back into a whole new cycle of discovery, probably buying again, personalizing perhaps, and experiencing all over. And as they're moving through this cycle, hopefully deepening, and we were talking yesterday a lot about how to keep cycling strong, right? We're coming off this record year, and how do we keep that interest up? How do we continue to have people, number one, now that they've dabbled their toe in the water, how do we keep them attached and growing in their interest in cycling? Well, this discovery life cycle, I think, is a key part of that, helping them move through this and learn more and more about, number one, about cycling, but also helping them to ensure that their equipment is suitable for what they actually need, who they are, and what they're trying to do. And that means that, number one, the product has got to be suitable for them. And at Compatio, we think about compatibility really as 3 dimensions. One dimension is the suitability of the product to the user. The second dimension is, does the product fit how they're using it? Is it set up the right way for riding the Two Rivers mountain bike course here in Springfield, Missouri? Does it have the right gearing and tires and so forth? But it also means compatibility in the sense of, do those products work together? Because if they think, oh, great, I'm going to go to this one bike setup and I'm going to go buy all this stuff, and it doesn't work right on their bike, and it takes them forever to install it, or they got to get out a cutting torch and a TIG welder, that's a problem, right? So we think about this as a multi-dimensional problem, and our goal at Compatio is to bring the knowledge and information together so that we can provide this cyclist with the right information, so that as they move through this activity over their life cycle, over the amount of time that they're going to be engaged with this activity, they're getting the answers that they need. I want to turn to why e-commerce systems don't really facilitate this. And and it's kind of a joking title, but it's kind of funny to think about it from this way of that, if you look at your average e-commerce system and you look at what it's doing and what it seems to expect is happening when you visit the site and start buying stuff, it doesn't really add up if you're looking for the kinds of answers that you should be looking for. And so let's talk about a few of those. So first of all, one of the basic myths is that cyclists know exactly what they want, and they know the right one that fits them, and they know what's going to go on their bike, and all they've got to do is go search for it. That's not happening. It's oftentimes hard to find the right thing. The other myth is that they're going to stay right on their site until they read enough to answer the question, and they'll never leave and go watch a YouTube video and never come back. So we know that doesn't happen either. But most sites seem to expect that that's what you're going to do, that you're going to come there, you're going to know exactly what you're looking for, and you're just going to click and buy it, and then you're going to leave a happy camper. It doesn't work that way. Next myth is, if they need to figure out compatibility, what goes with what, either the right thing for themselves or the right thing for the bike, they'll carefully read the fine print, or they're going to go study the compatibility guide over on Shimano's website, and then of course they're going to come back and buy it. That doesn't happen either. Once they leave, oftentimes they never come back. Another myth that I like to joke about is this idea that you can throw every sort of product, like crank arm and a bolt and a chain ring and a spindle and bottom bracket or two into the cranksets collection on your site, and that's going to make perfect sense to the shopper. They're going to be able to find exactly what they need when you do that. It's not what happens. And when I go look at cycling e-commerce sites, I look at the way these products are categorized on them. It just drives me nuts, frankly, because it can make it really hard to find what you're actually looking for. And then the other one is that it seems as though everybody thinks search is going to solve all the problems. And so no matter how messy your data is, either in terms of how you categorized it or your specification data and how accurate that spec data is and how well formatted it is, we'll just take care of it with search. That doesn't happen. I've been on many sites where search does not give me the answers that I need, and it doesn't do it efficiently. And then my favorite myth is that those recommenders that run at the bottom of the page, and they'll say something like, when you're looking at a product, it'll say frequently bought together, or customers also bought, or customers are also looking at. Those recommenders that run on the bottom of the page, it's a myth that they're useful to me. Because they don't really understand what's going on. They're just doing some machine learning. They're looking at patterns and how people are buying. And they're saying, yeah, if somebody bought, a windbreaker and a dog bowl last Wednesday, then maybe we should show that today because it's Wednesday. That's not the optimum way to occupy that real estate on the screen. There's much more valuable content that we can provide there. So these recommenders are not very useful, and we're going to talk about those as well. Behind this is some fundamental sort of design assumptions that are built into these e-commerce platforms, and that's what I want to touch on next. So why are they doing this? Fundamentally, it's because e-commerce platforms are built to sell products. They're not built to sell solutions. And what I mean by a solution is a set of products that go together to solve that customer's individual need. That's what we refer to as a solution. And e-commerce platforms are not built to do that. They're built to sell one product at a time. Product categorization on these systems is loosely controlled. There's no enforcement. And what that translates to is that you end up with very loosely categorized products with very loosely attached attributes. So if you want to go search for the crankset, for instance, by the crank arm length, and I'm looking for something that's 175 millimeters long, and I want it to be compatible with a BB30 bottom bracket, the data may or may not be set up to help you to facilitate that search, and that can be really problematic when a user is looking for something specific. In addition to that, the attributes themselves, that data, those elements, how many speeds are on the cassette, how long is the crank arm, what's the diameter of the spindle, what's the width of the hub or the width of the rim. Those attributes are loosely controlled as well. And the problem with that is that if you want to inject any intelligence into the site, without good, accurate, and consistent data, it's very difficult to do that. Or you can do it, but it's very, very expensive. You're now into some fairly high-end machine learning and even AI stuff to be able to do that in order to make sense out of the junky data. The other issue with e-commerce platforms is that product-to-product relationships usually can only be explicitly defined. So if I'm, want to set up my store and I want to say that, hey, look, these helmets are really good with that style of riding. It's a downhill mountain bike, and these are full face helmets, which are, the right helmets to, if you're doing downhill racing, you probably want a full face helmet. If you want to set that up on your site, probably you're going to have to define that explicitly. You're going to have to go in and set up that relationship explicitly. That's a problem because if you think about the number of different ways that products can be combined together, it's an astronomical number. And to try to maintain that is actually quite challenging over time. And then that leads me to the final comment here is that there is no inbuilt way for any e-commerce platform to handle configuration, the set of all the components that go together to make up the bike, or compatibility, what goes with what, and even in an imprecise level. There are about 2.95 times 10 to the 111th power combinations of components possible in a 2021 bike, in theory. Now, not all those go together, obviously, but there is 295 with about 109 zeros behind it, number of different ways that you can combine these components and get them wrong. And there's only a few of those ways that are actually correct. And it's impossible for e-commerce platforms to actually handle this. So what's the solution to this? And this is what we're focused on at Compatio. So first of all, with respect to e-commerce platforms, they're not built to sell solutions, they're built to sell products. Basically, we've designed plugins that are smart, that know how products go together, know whether they fit the user, and know whether they fit the need. We've also built a precision taxonomy system that couples up to the catalog, to the bike shop catalog. It imposes our categorization scheme on top of the catalog so that we can control the attributes, control the data quality, and inject really good intelligence into the site. We also have built a very smart engine that knows how to figure out whether products go together, so that we don't have to explicitly go say, this Eagle crankset will go with that rear cassette. We don't have to say that. Our engine can just figure it out, which is actually very powerful. That means that we don't have to maintain all these crazy combinations manually or explicitly. And then we've made that engine powerful enough to handle very technical and complex relationships, like how to tell if the bottom bracket is going to fit in that given frame, or whether it'll fit with that frame and drivetrain. But it's also loose enough that it could even handle, simple sort of softer compatibility requirements, even based on aesthetics if we wanted to. Like we want the blue accented products to go with these other blue accented products. We can do stuff like that. So we've built some pretty powerful capability as a set of plugins and a precision taxonomy system that enables us to solve these kinds of problems. And we call that knowledge-based commerce. And basically the bottom line is that it's going to make it a lot more valuable for the customer who's shopping online. It helps them find what they want a lot easier, and it provides the necessary information and intelligence so that they can put together a complex assembly or find a compatible product. And this is awful nice to have if you want to run your site out there in the wide open frontier of the internet, where you don't have to be on there on a chat all the time answering all their questions. The site will do it for you. So this is the back end of our system. We call it the Compatio product graph. This is actually a view of the relationship between bottom brackets and cranksets. I'm not going to delve into this, but I think it's cool, especially against a black background. We've built these apps for a number of e-commerce platforms to this point, and we'll be rolling out other integrations this year. Right now, we run on Shopify, Magento, and WooCommerce. It's available as a recommendation system that runs at the bottom of the page, and it replaces those other recommenders that aren't very smart. We've got a smart bundler, a cross-seller, a compatibility lookup function, and we're rolling out Product Data Hub and a dynamic configurator here in the next few weeks. And what these look like, or what these do, first of all, is the following. So they run on those platforms, and we can extend them very easily to other platforms. They all reference our master taxonomy of bike industry components, highly accurate data, and very complete data. For example, we collect about 95 data points just on frames. Our compatibility engine has knowledge from experienced bike mechanics, and it can calculate compatibility and configuration. There's no maintenance required on your part or the part of the retailer to get the compatibility results. The engine just figures it out. We've got a Compatio score function, an algorithm that will rank the best fit of components. Compatibility is not binary. It's not 0 or 1. It's a matter of degree. Some things will fit better than others. I mean, anything will fit if you've got a TIG welder and a cutting torch, but that's probably not what we want. We want a really good fit, and we can rank them based on how well they fit and recommend the best fit to the customer. We only are going to recommend what's in your inventory. We don't want to show them a great product and say, okay, well, sorry, this isn't in stock. Go find it somewhere else. But importantly, we can also calculate substitutes. So if they are looking for a particular function or particular component, they think they want that Tram Eagle, or that Shimano GSX 810 derailleur or whatever. They think they need that, but guess what? That's not in stock, and we've got a lot of issues with that right now, and probably will continue to have issues around that for a number of months. Based on Jay's talk yesterday, we can recommend substitutes. So if they're looking for something that does a certain function, we can recommend something else that's in stock. So in general, this is the way our apps behave. Specifically, this is what our recommender system looks like. This runs at the bottom of the page. If you were looking at the website, an Eagle XX1 trigger shifter, we're going to show you some stuff that goes with that. Derailleurs, and the categories depend upon what the product is. Probably with a shifter, the next most likely thing for you to buy is probably a derailleur, a rear derailleur certainly. So that happens to be, in this case, the most relevant category. We're going to show you the relevant categories and the best fitting products that are in inventory that go with the thing you're looking at. We can also deliver that as a bundler. So you're looking at that shifter, and we're going to recommend 1, 2, 3, 4 products that go with that as a specific bundle. Maybe that shifter, we want to sell it with a derailleur, and that's configurable in our system, how many other products you show with this. But we're going to show you the best, we're going to show the customer the best fitting product or products that go with that thing they're looking at. They can click and add it to the cart. We also have our cross-seller function that pops up once they've added the component to their cart. This pops up as a modal window and says, hey, here's some other stuff that goes. Why don't you pick one of them? And again, the categories that we show and the items that we show is also controllable in our system. We're rolling out in just a few weeks here Dynamic Configurator. It lets you build an entire assembly. We're going to start out with a drivetrain builder. We'll be rolling that out very soon. It lets you build a drivetrain starting from the shifters and what kind of a setup do you want? Do you want a 1x11, a 1x12, a 2x11, whatever, and you can build up your drivetrain. I've gone through a number of our apps and talked about the kinds of things that we do, but of course it comes down to what's the value of this kind of thing, of having it in your site. We've tracked, we obviously collect analytics on how well these things are behaving and how well they're performing. And this is actually a report from one of our sites. It's a fairly small site. It's probably comparable to a site for an average bike dealer. We've had these apps up and running for about 4 months on this site, growing in the amount of user transactions that they're handling. And it's kind of interesting to watch this. I think the customers on this site are learning to rely on these tools more and more. We started with about 2% of the cart transactions actually went through or were touched by our apps. But now, as we roll into February, about 6% of all the products that were bought on this site were actually touched by our applications. And that's just in the first 8 days of February, which is like we ran this report on the 8th of February, so we only had 8 days. But we're seeing a growing reliance of their customers on these apps, a growing share of their our involvement in what gets placed in the cart, and most significantly, we're seeing this app pay for itself over and over and over and over and over. The average over the lifespan of the product is about a 561% ROI. So basically, it's paying for itself 5 times over every month. And actually, into February, when the activity's just been through the ceiling, it's paid for itself 18 times over just so far into February. So it's really doing the job. It's obviously answering the questions that the customers have, and it's helping them buy more product on this site, and it's driving up the revenue on this site and creating happier customers. So we're really excited. With the content, share an invitation with you. First of all, if you have a Shopify store, see us, and we'll set up a short workshop to show you how easily we can get these things running on your site or your store. If you don't have a web store, or if you're not on one of our supported platforms, see us and we'll talk about options. We may want to add an integration for your platform. I also want to invite you to our early access program for our upcoming mobile app. That'll have compatibility lookup, compatibility ratings, and there'll be some really cool social commerce features in there in the very near future. We'd like to get some early adopters using that app as soon as possible. So share your card or register at our website. Thanks for attending. I really appreciate your attention today. Bye-bye.